Hello and welcome to Nightline. I'm Brendan Wong. News making the headlines. PAC calls for audit on 20 million ringgit in public funds invested on National Flying Car Project. And 1 cent per week fuel price increase, just a suggestion, says Saifuddin. Good morning. Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, PAC, on Thursday revealed that it had detected several flaws in the flying car project and called for an audit on the 20 million ringgit in public funds invested in the private firm behind the project, Aerodyne Ventures Sendirian Berhad, AVSB. The move is to scrutinize and ascertain if the funds had been used for the project.
In its report on Thursday, the PAC said the project was announced prematurely before notifying the Cabinet or relevant agencies. It said even though Entrepreneur Development Minister Dr Mahathir Mohamad promoted the project as if it was a national project, the PAC found that it is actually a private initiative. The PAC said that it found that the International Trade and Industries Ministry and the Malaysian Industry Group for High Technology MITE were not referred to at all on the direction of Malaysia's air mobility, especially the flying car. It added that Datuk Sri Ridzuan, who has been promoting the vehicle and Aerodyne Ventures Sendirian Berhad since February this year, did not perform any due diligence on the firm. The committee said no assessment was made of AVSB's finances, intellectual property rights, expertise, or its capacity to develop the flying car. The PAC also challenged Datuk Sri Ridzuan's statement that AVSB did not receive a single cent from the government and that the prototype was locally designed. It insisted that public funds were used as there was involvement from MITE. The committee went on to say that the Economic Affairs Ministry has confirmed that the fund was channeled from VTSB to AVSB on November 1st, 2019. The PAC also advised the government to study a project first before making a public announcement. The move is to avoid any negative perception that could turn into criticism from every level of society. It also added that a complete flying car must be available before anything is tabled to the Cabinet for approval, as this was of public and national interest. It then advised Datuk Sri Ridzuan to consult and collaborate with the relevant ministries, departments and agencies before making any public announcements on any project. He was also told to perform due diligence before embarking on similar projects. The committee also called for VTSB to monitor the 20 million ringgit given to AVSB to ensure that the money is spent responsibly on the flying car project.
The federal government has never borrowed to pay its civil servants' salaries. In a statement on Thursday, the finance minister said this had been proven by the reaffirmation of Malaysia's sovereign credit ratings at A3 or A- with a stable outlook. Lim Guan Eng said that should the federal government borrow to pay salaries of its civil servants, it would inevitably lead to an immediate credit rating downgrade.
Lim said that the government has sufficient funds to pay our civil servants. He noted that the government is on target to cut its fiscal deficit from 3.7% of gross domestic product (GDP) in 2018 to 3.4% this year. He added that all borrowings raised by the government are to finance the fiscal deficit and all development expenditures, adding that none of the borrowings are utilized for operational expenditure like the payment of salaries. Lim was responding to a claim made by UMNO Deputy President Dr Sri Mohamad Hassan that the federal government borrowed money to pay the salaries of its civil servants. The finance minister pointed out that in the third quarter of 2019, the government's emoluments was 19.9 billion ringgit. In comparison, the government's total revenue for the same quarter was 68.8 billion ringgit, which meant that the government's revenue was more than 3 times the size of its emoluments.
Malaysia should emulate South Korea in applying global thinking to further develop the export industry and not merely depend on the domestic market. Prime Minister Tun Dr Mahathir Mohamad also urged the local market players to give attention to the manufacturing of goods that had high value export value, thus yielding high returns, and local companies would no longer depend on the support from the government like before.
Speaking to the Malaysian media before concluding his visit to South Korea on Thursday, Tun Dr Mahathir cited how the South Korean vehicle export industry started with only one brand, Hyundai, and expressed confidence that Proton 2 could achieve similar success. He added that South Korea had started with the construction industry to the extent that it had reached the desert, besides taking part in Malaysia's development through the construction of the Pulau Pinang Bridge and the Petronas Twin Towers.
Walaupun dulu mereka dikenali sebagai the Hermit Kingdom, dia tak bercampur dengan orang, tapi dia dapat acquire technology very quickly, skills very quickly.
The Prime Minister said that there was only one company in Malaysia that could be considered as successful, namely Petronas, and that was because of the natural wealth of the country. He added that a business must be carried out with sincerity and would not succeed when there were too many political interventions.
The Prime Minister also lashed out at those who brought up the issue of Chin Peng's remains returning to Malaysia, saying it is part of an attempt to vilify the PH administration. Tun Dr Mahathir questioned why there was no fuss made when other communist leaders returned to Malaysia, such as Samsia Fakih and Rashid Maidin.
Ya, kita tahu Guerrillas dulu dalam perang dia bunuh banyak orang. Kita pun bunuh banyak orang juga. Jadi benda yang semacam ini, yang nak bangkit ni untuk apa? Nak puas hati siapa? Nak suruh kita pergi kutip balik abu dia tu, hantar balik ke luar negeri. Benda yang kecil-kecil yang tu korek. Nak memburukkan kerjaan.
Earlier on Thursday, Deputy Inspector General of Police Datuk Mazlan Mansor said the police will be calling up the group of people who were involved in bringing back Chin Peng's ashes. It was reported that the ashes of Chin Peng, whose real name was Ong Boon Hua, were brought back on September the 16th from Thailand, with a funeral ceremony being held on the same day. Chin Peng died of cancer in Bangkok in 2013, a month before his 89th birthday. For the record, any person bringing remains into Malaysia is required to inform customs officers on duty and produce relevant documents to facilitate passage. On another issue, Tun Dr Mahathir also advised his cabinet ministers to work together and avoid conflicts with the Secretary-General of their respective ministries for the good of the government administration. He said any conflicts which arise between the two parties should be resolved together.
Jadi kita kena learn how to work together. Ini saya punya advice dalam kabinet pun. Saya kata kita kena cuba kerja sama lah. Kalau kita cuba, saya fikir kita boleh berbaik-baik dan mereka akan bekerja. Tapi kalau kita tunjuk muka masam dan kita tak ni, susah sikit.
He was commenting on a news portal report which alleges that almost 10 government officers were suspected of leaking government information. The matter had been brought up by several cabinet ministers in the last cabinet meeting. The portal also mentioned that several ministries had asked for the Secretary-General and senior government officers to be transferred from their respective ministries. The gradual increase of the RON95 retail price by 1 cent per week starting January next year was just a suggestion and has yet to be finalized by the government. Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs Minister Datuk Sri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail clarified that the proposal has not received the green light from the Cabinet and his ministry was still engaging with various quarters for feedback on the matter. Datuk Sri Saifuddin said the move was still being discussed as fixing the market fuel price is dependent on various factors: the automatic price mechanism (APM), currency exchange, the price of crude oil at that time and others.
Jadi kita bincang pelbagai perkara. Jadi salah satu daripadanya yang belum lagi berupa perkara yang kita tamakkan adalah merupakan perkara yang semalam dalam jawapan malam. Tapi apakah statusnya, itu bukan satu perkara yang kita mutamakan lagi.
Speaking at the launch of Buy Malaysian Products campaign by Petronas Dagangan in Ampang on Thursday, he added that he will bring the proposal to the cabinet meeting on Friday and an announcement will be made if a decision has been made. Datuk Sri Saifuddin's deputy, Chong Chieng Jen, told members of parliament during the Dewan Rakyat sitting on Wednesday that the government would start removing fuel subsidies by increasing the RON 95 pump price until it reaches market price. The gradual increase will help reduce the people's burden and prevent the prices of goods from rising sharply. This was in line with the implementation of the new petrol subsidy program PSP, which is also set to begin in January next year.
The Parliamentary Services Commission is expected to be set up next year in an effort to enhance Parliament's power of autonomy. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Datuk Liew Vui Keong, told the Dewan Rakyat on Thursday that a study on the commission was now in the final stages and the bill was being prepared.
Penubuhan Suruhanjaya Parlimen Malaysia masih lagi dalam peringkat kajian dan penyediaan draft undang-undang. Penubuhan Suruhanjaya ini akan dilaksanakan setelah ia diperhalusi dan dipersetujui oleh pihak kerajaan.
Replying to a supplementary question on the obstructions to the immediate setting up of the commission, Datuk Liew said he needed time to ensure that the move was smoothly implemented. Last March, the chairman of the Parliamentary Caucus on Reform and Governance, Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim, said he hoped the bill could be tabled in the Dewan Rakyat session last July to allow the Parliamentary Services Act, which was abolished in 1992, to be revived. However, the bill was not tabled during the July session. FGV Holdings Berhad has reduced its losses to 262.41 million ringgit for the third quarter ended September 30th, 2019. This compared with a net loss of 849.46 million ringgit recorded in the same period last year, while revenue went up 11% to 3.55 billion ringgit from 3.19 billion ringgit previously.
At Thursday's announcement of the financial result, its Group Chief Executive Officer Datuk Haris Fadzila Hassan said the group's plantation sector recorded an increase of 15% in fresh fruit bunch FFB production to 1.24 million metric tons from 1.08 million metric tons previously. Meanwhile, the sugar sector recorded a loss of 220 million ringgit, compared with a profit of 22 million ringgit in the same quarter last year, primarily due to an impairment of 145 million ringgit for property, plant and equipment. Datuk Haris also said that the group's transformation plan was bearing fruit, evident in the significant improvement in operational performance.
So there are a few big ticket items that we have in our transformation plan. One of them is basically the savings from procurement is 150 million. So we are looking that we're going to exceed that by the end of the year. We're going to achieve between 155 million to 170 million from the procurement saving. The other big ticket item that we mentioned is the 350 million disposal of non-core and non-performing assets during the transformation. To date, we have completed divestment of about 129 million.
He noted that with higher crude palm oil prices in the fourth quarter, the group's improving operational numbers bode well for the future.
Lembaga Tabung Haji TH recorded a net profit of 500 million ringgit in the third quarter of this year, boosting its profit for the first 9 months to 1.3 billion ringgit. In a statement on Thursday, TH said the positive outcome was a result of ongoing cost-saving measures in its management and administration. The company also recorded earnings of 900 million ringgit for the same quarter, increasing the revenue for the first 9 months of 2019 to 2.1 billion ringgit. The funds were generally maintained mainly from the fixed income asset investment, real estate investment, equity investment and Islamic money market instrument investment. It said the shift in TH investment strategy to a more stable investment asset managed to ease the pressure from from equity market volatility caused by global trade war tensions. Throughout the 3 months in the third quarter of 2019, more than 87,000 new savings accounts were opened, increasing the number of depositors to 9.43 million. In Sabah, the Kota Kinabalu Court of Appeal on Thursday dismissed with cost former Chief Minister Tan Sri Musa Aman's appeal against dismissal of his suit challenging Datuk Sri Muhammad Shafi Abdal's appointment as Sabah Chief Minister. The three-member bench comprising Justices Datuk Kamardin Hashim, Datuk Rodzaria Bujang and Datuk Muhammad Zabidin Muhammadiyah allowed the respondent's preliminary objection to strike out the appeal after agreeing with Datuk Sri Shafi's lawyer that the case was academic. Tan Sri Musa was also ordered to pay 20,000 ringgit to the first respondent, the Sabah Head of State Tun Dr Mahathir, and 50,000 ringgit to the second respondent, Datuk Sri Shafi. Tan Sri Musa's lawyer Tengku Fuad Tengku Ahmad said he was disappointed with the decision but stressed that the defence team had received an immediate instruction from Tan Sri Musa to take the matter to the federal court. On November 7th last year, the Kota Kinabalu High Court dismissed the suit filed by the former Sabah Chief Minister against Datuk Sri Shafi when it ruled that the latter was the lawful Chief Minister and that his appointment was constitutional. Animal parts worth more than 200,000 ringgit seized. This and more when we return. Welcome back. Animal parts, including elephant tusks, deer antlers and various animal skins, believed to be worth about 240,000 ringgit, were seized in a special operation codenamed Op Khazanah. Deputy Inspector General of Police Datuk Mazlan Mansur said 4 local suspects were detained in the operation launched on November 19 in Kelantan and Kedah.
Datuk Mazlan said with the arrest of the 4 men, and forces believe that they are closer to identifying the mastermind behind the syndicate. He added the suspects in their 40s were tasked with hunting the animals and disposing of animal parts to potential buyers.
Tentang satu pendekatan yang telah pun kita buat di mana tindakan untuk menuduh di mahkamah telah pun dilaksanakan, di mana pendakwaan dibuat ke atas 3 suspek yang mana hukuman telah pun dikenakan, iaitu lebih kurang 2 tahun hukuman itu dalam aktiviti ini.
5 luxury cars were also seized in the operation. Authorities believe the animal parts were meant for markets in Malaysia and Thailand. Datuk Mazlan said the Anti-Money Laundering Division, which was also involved in the operation, froze 13 bank accounts belonging to the suspects and family members. The accounts were said to contain about 1.58 million ringgit. It is believed that the syndicate has been operating for about 5 to 6 years based on the luxury cars that were seized. In Kuala Lumpur, the High Court on Thursday dismissed the prosecution's application to transfer the corruption cases of Baling MP Datuk Sri Abdul Aziz Abdul Rahim and his brother Datuk Abdul Latif from the Sessions Court to the High Court. Justice Muhammad Nazlan Muhammad Ghazali dismissed the application on the grounds that the charges against the 2 accused under the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission MACC Act and Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activities Act did not appear to give rise to any novelty in points of law. Muhammad Nazlan further said the Sessions Court are no less competent to try the cases against both accused. Following the development, Sessions Court Judge Azura Alwi fixed December 12 for the next mentioned date. In Pulau Pinang, 4 families were left homeless after 8 squatter homes and a heavy vehicle workshop were destroyed in a fire at Taman Cemerlang in Jelutong on Thursday. According to Jalan Perak Fire and Rescue Department Chief Aslan Hassan, 3 teams of firefighters from Jalan Perak, Lebuh Pantai and Paya Terubong were deployed to the scene after a distress call was received at 11:44 a.m. The firefighters then managed to bring the blaze under control nearly an hour later. The cause of the fire and amount of losses are still being investigated. No casualties were reported in the incident.
Coming up next, Trump officially makes interference in Hong Kong's chaos. Stay with us. And on to the foreign front. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed 2 U.S. bills on Thursday supporting Hong Kong's pro-democracy protesters, defying calls from China to block the legislation and putting the territory's special trade status at risk. Trump ratified the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act after it was overwhelmingly passed by the Republican and Democrat lawmakers. The new law mandates the U.S. government to re-examine annually Hong Kong's status and imposes sanctions to anyone who has suppressed human rights in the former British colony. In a personal signing statement, Trump said that he had signed the bill out of respect for President Xi Jinping, China, and the people of Hong Kong. Trump also signed a second bill that blocks new export licenses for tear gas, rubber bullets, and handcuffs being sent to the Hong Kong police force. China's foreign ministry condemned Trump's decision, saying in a statement that Washington had seriously interfered with China's internal affairs. Hong Kong's government, meanwhile, called the move as unnecessary and unwarranted, saying the decision would not help resolve the crisis. South Korea's top court on Thursday ordered a second retrial for disgraced former President Park Geun-hye, seeking heavier punishment for her illegally taking money from the country's spy agency. Thursday's ruling come after an appeals court reduced her sentence by 1 year to 5 years in prison in proceedings for pocketing money from the National Intelligence Service. The Supreme Court said in a statement that the charge dropped on appeal had misunderstood the legal principles and ordered that Park should be found guilty. The penalties in the 2 cases apply consecutively, meaning the 67-year-old is currently due to be approaching 100 by the time she is set to be released. Park, the country's first female president, who was impeached in 2017, is currently facing a total of 32 years behind bars, including a 25-year sentence on corruption-related counts and another 2 years for violating election laws. The 2019 SEA Games. Malaysian netball team continues their winning ways. Sports, the 2019 SEA Games. The national netball team stormed their way to their 3rd consecutive victory after beating Brunei 69-23 in their round-robin match on Thursday.
The 2017 SEA Games gold medal winners made a bright start into the game as they led 17-5 in the first half. Tracy Robinson's women that extended their lead to 36-15 in the second half before romping to a 53-18 lead in the third half. Brunei upped their game in the remaining period, but the national team, however, continued to dominate as they went on to wrap up the match 69-23. Malaysia will next face arch rivals Singapore in their final round-robin match on Friday.
And that's it for Nightline. In the Ukraine, a well-known local artist, Olena Turianska, is reviving the traditional craft of making vitinaka by turning it into modern art, featuring more sophisticated contemporary designs which have been displayed at galleries in Berlin and across Ukraine. Let's take a look. I'm Brendan Wong. Thank you for tuning in and take care.